Welcome to the Legendary Upside podcast. My name is Pat Corain. You can follow all of my content at legendaryupside.com. With me today, Greg Brainos, the Coachspeak Index. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Pat. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. This is, I think, honestly, one of your account has been one of the best new additions to Twitter. New additions to Twitter have the bar's lower than it used to be, I guess. But
yeah, they're allowing adult content now.
So, but I mean, seriously, the clips, like, it's really interesting to me because these clips, these press conferences, they've existed the whole time, right? But no one has really been going and grabbing the interesting parts and sharing them in a consistent way. It's mostly just like, you know, I've done some of this when I've been extremely biased about a player. You know, like I might have done this with like Ronald Jones, you know, go find some clips that back up what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. But you're going through and actually watching a bunch of these press conferences, a bunch of these training camp kind of pressers and stuff that they do after the mini camps and stuff, and sharing it in a consistent way. And we're getting to see what they're saying about the players, and in some ways getting a better sense of like what the coaches are like, which it's all extremely valuable. So just excited to talk to you about what, you know, you think about the process of doing this, what you think jumps out is the important stuff to pay attention to.
Yeah. So first of all, context is so important to me and so valuable when, you know, we're thinking about our rankings and how do we value this player compared to another player. And we're in the age of aggregation now where we get really short headlines and you know, kind of clickbaity stuff of Sam Darnold QB1 and then not much else. So I think it's very important that we pay attention to everything that the coach is saying or that the OC is saying, which is why I like to, in the clips, include the question from the reporter and then the full answer from the coach. And yeah, I'll provide, you know, what I think is kind of the takeaway in the tweet, but people should be watching the entire video. So yeah, context first of all is a big reason why I do this.
Dan Campbell, I feel like, would maybe be the king of the context. He had a quote. I've talked about this a couple of times on Legendary Sickos, but he had a quote that I believe I saw the clip from your account, where he's talking about Sam Laporta and his targets potentially declining, and basically like, who knows, even Brock Wright could see more targets. But he's like, if you watch the clip, this guy loves Sam Laporta. He's saying, I don't care how many targets he has because he does so many other things well. And like, then when he gets to the Brock Wright thing, he's like, even Brock Wright could see targets. It's like, okay, he's doing a bit. Like, this is not, we don't need to freak out. And if anything, this is like maybe bullish for Laporta. So, you know, Dan Campbell, you want to see the body language.
Right. That's absolutely correct reading of the situation. He's just talking about what a great teammate in person Sam Laporta is, that it doesn't matter to Laporta what his, you know, if his numbers increase or decrease this year, he's a team player. That doesn't take anything away from how good he is and how valuable he is to this offense. And to your point about Brock Wright, you know, when he makes the big motion, people were kind of freaking out over that tweet saying, oh my God, Sam Laporta, drop him in the rankings. He's talking about Brock Wright. Yeah. Well, people, I guess, aren't aware that this is kind of an ongoing inside joke between Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions beat reporters of how much he loves Brock Wright. So it's kind of
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's really just kind of a callback. He's saying maybe some of those targets go to Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Gibbs, Montgomery, and then like pause for dramatic effect of that hit, you know, just outstretched arm of Moses, Brock Wright.
Okay, so he's literally doing a bit.
We're not projecting Brock Wright for 70 targets this year. It's a bit. The difference between Dan Campbell and in Sean Payton with their bits is that Dan Campbell lets you in on the joke, and Sean Payton is just strongly committed to never letting you in on the joke.
No, he is. I'm gonna get to Sean Payton here soon, but Dan Campbell, I mean, the one thing that's interesting about him, I mean, he definitely kind of he's willing to let you in on the bit. He's willing to kind of speak openly and speak kind of passionately in ways that, you know, kind of help you understand where he's coming from. I've noticed the Jameson Williams stuff, right? Obviously, everyone's talked about that, but it feels different than like the way he talks about like Donovan Peoples-Jones, and you know, like you can really tell, like, okay, this seems kind of real, that he's like at least impressed with Jameson Williams in a way that he maybe never has been in an athletic post. They specifically mentioned like pay attention when coaches are talking about players in positive ways when they haven't done so in the past. So they were kind of picking up that same thing. Are you like, when we have, first of all, do you kind of agree that this stuff on Jameson Williams is worth paying attention to? And then if so, like, how much are we going to want to factor in something like the coaches seem impressed with Jameson Williams entering training camp in his third season after a couple disappointing years?
Yeah, I mean, do you want to just go down this timeline of Dan Campbell's comments on Jameson Williams real quick? August 2nd, 2023. We just got to keep working through it. October 24th, 2023. We got to keep working. We're just going to keep working. And this is when Jameson Williams was, you know, had a bunch of drops and stuff. December 4th, 23. We want to find other creative ways to continue to use him. And like I said before, he just continues to grow. He just gets a little bit better every day, and he's working, and it's good, man. It's good. We're in a good place right now. December 12th, 2023. We'll keep working to find some different ways to get him more involved. He's earned that, so we're going to keep working at it. And if you subscribe to Reception Perception, this is kind of lining up with when Jameson Williams is a little bit better last season. February 27th, 2024. This is when it's really ramping up. He's going to push to be a full-time starter now, and that's what we're looking for. He's only going to get better and better and better. In March, Lions let Josh Reynolds walk in free agency. In the draft, they draft 0 pass catchers, and then May 24th of this year. If you said, give me one player that is the most improved this offseason, JMO would be that guy right now. He is a man on a mission, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Dan Campbell, one of the most honest coaches in the NFL. They asked him about Denzel Mims last season, and his response was, he's in the room. That's about all I can say. And they cut him like a day or two later.
Oh, he wasn't in the room.
He wasn't in the room any longer. And then we saw his recent comments on Donovan Peoples-Jones. Dan Campbell, there's not a lot of guesswork there when he speaks. He's going to tell you exactly what he's thinking. Now, I do think it's important to note he has not said that Jameson Williams has that wide receiver 2 job yet. He's kind of hinted at it. He's saying, it's progressing in that way. The other day he was talking about, I believe it was Khalif Raymond, and he was saying, we have a third spot open. Kind of intimating that Jameson Williams is the wide receiver 2, but he hasn't really like come out and said it. So that draft price is getting pretty pricey right now.
Yeah.
And if you look at where Jameson Williams like really, really wins, it doesn't match up well with Jared Goff, right? Goff doesn't throw the ball deep a ton, which is one of Jameson Williams' kind of wheelhouses. Right. But you got to look. This is going to be a top 5 offense. They're going to score a lot of points. They have one of the best play callers in the NFL in Ben Johnson. We saw him dial up some real nasty stuff for Jameson Williams in the playoffs. And if we get that this year, and we get 80% snap share for Jameson Williams, yeah, he could absolutely go off. But man, really, really big range of outcomes I feel for him this year.
Yeah, like it's definitely, if you're making a bear case that like, oh, do we even know how much will be out there? That's much weaker bear case than it was before, I think. But if you're saying he's Jared Goff's deep threat and the number 3 target on the Lions, and how much bigger will his target share even be than a Khalif Raymond's, that I feel like is still a legitimate bear case.
Yeah, absolutely. And the coach speak that we get in training camp is going to be really key to pay attention to what Dan Campbell's saying, because again, he's laying it out exactly as it is. So if he says Jameson Williams, wide receiver 2, he's going to have a great year, then I'm on that train, and very willing to take the dive in best ball, redraft, kind of a I don't know if I want to be about that life.
Yeah, it's a little trickier when you got to choose when to start him. But hey, we have the coach speak. Maybe you'll tell us that week. We're going to throw 7 targets to Jameson Williams this week. All right, we talked about one of the most honest coaches, one of the most fun coaches in the league. What about Sean Payton? Sean Payton has told us repeatedly. Now, I was doing some press conference grinding after the draft last year, and I found a clip where Payton was talking about Marvin Mims, and he said, when you're driving on Friday, that you can hit traffic, but when you're out there and it's Sunday, it's wide open. That's what it looks like watching Marvin Mims. He's out there driving around on Sunday. I'm like, oh man, this guy's coming up with metaphors to talk about how open this dude is. Like, what a smash! What could possibly go wrong? Certainly, this guy won't be why he doesn't hit. that would make any sense.
That Marvin Mims, it was not wide open for him on Sundays.
No, I mean, a lot of traffic. Yeah, he didn't make it to the stadium. It felt like. What? And then repeatedly, and you've logged this. It's very funny. So maybe you could kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of the Marvin Mims saga, because it has been pretty epic since we've had Payton talk about him from the very first time to kind of on and on as he just isn't out on the field, but it's happening soon. We're still getting that. Is that just at this point like telling us more about Payton than Mims?
Yeah, I mean, you got to show me. Stop talking about it and do it. You know that you're the head coach, right? Like, you make these decisions. Okay, he's talking about, I'm looking at my notepad and on. All right, he plays like a handful of snaps. He was 5th in snaps per game last year. So when Sean Payton says, Jerry, it's on us, but Jerry Jeudy was impeding his ability to get on the field. Okay, what about little Jordan Humphrey? What about the other guy whose name I've forgotten? Brandon something.
Brandon Williams.
Brandon Johnson.
No. Johnson. Yeah, I think that's right.
I think Brandon Johnson. Fifth in snaps per game behind those guys in Jeudy and Sutton. Also, Sean Payton, for a while now, but especially since the draft this year, several times he's been talking about how he loves the size in the wide receiver room for the Broncos. That's not great for Marvin Mims, who's 5'9", the 9th tallest receiver on the roster. Yeah, man, this is just like, I'll believe it when I see it. Certainly the opportunity is there, and he's cheap enough in best ball where, I don't mind taking him in the, if he drops to 170-ish or in the 160s, even like we saw when he does get snaps, what like the kind of production that he's capable of, even if he's not a great route runner, even if he is pretty terrible at like getting away from someone who's hand fighting with him, which is really funny that they drafted Troy Franklin, because like kind of the same thing, but a few inches taller than Mims. But he is capable of really, really big spike weeks like we saw in week 2 of last season. So I don't mind mixing him in now and then. But as far as Marvin Mims' season, I'll believe it when I see it. And this is the tough thing with coach speak is when a coach is very reliable, can say, all right, super 90% reliability rating on depth chart or usage and workload Coachspeak. All right, we can believe this. But when a coach is unreliable, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to happen for this player. It just means that we can't take the coach's word for it. So that's where I am with Marvin Mims.
Does it? I mean, at this point, are you like thinking like, does it make Troy Franklin's outlook a little bit more volatile because like we don't know if we can trust Marvin Mims to get out there, and you know he could maybe he's this year's little Jordan Humphrey playing ahead of Marvin Mims, or are you just kind of like I think we just got to go back to the basics and bet on the profiles here.
I mean, we just didn't really see it with Mims last season. So like what makes us think that we're going to see it with him this season besides an unreliable coach saying that it's going to happen? Man, it is really tough because I did 24 drafts when I was in the States, and I'm going to knock the rest out when I come back next month. But when it got down to that area of Marvin Mims or Troy Franklin, it was basically like 50-50. All right, I'll take Troy Franklin in this one, and the next one I might take Mims.
Now, like with your that's kind of how I'm playing, and I'm sort of just mixing them up because I really just don't know. But with the backfield, we like the Broncos backfield is also one we don't have a ton of clarity about, and Payton seems intent on us not having clarity. You know, he's like, hey, you know how you thought it was really just like between Williams, Estime, and Jaleel? Like now there's this new guy, and I'm not going to stop talking about him.
Yeah.
So, like, do you have? I mean, is it just kind of the same thing? Like he's not very reliable, so we don't know. But I mean, he's saying positive things about pretty much everybody. Has anything jumped out to you from the Coachspeak around the Broncos backfield from Payton or anyone else?
Yeah, well, OC Joe Lombardi yesterday had a quick little presser where he talked about how Jaleel McLaughlin looks better in pass protection right now, which he also quantified it as, hey, it's the underwear Olympics, you know, no pads on yet. So we'll see come training camp if he's really improved in pass protection. That is something that really kept him off the field last year. Didn't see a ton of snaps, but when he was in the game, he saw opportunities on, I believe it was 61.2% of those snaps. So it was kind of a tell when McLaughlin was on the field. But Payton's, been talking about how hard he's working. He's at the facility at 5:15 in the morning. He's working out. He's getting stronger.
Lombardi mentioned that too. I think he was, he's like, you can always count on Jaleel to put the work in.
Yeah. So you love to see that. Players become better through really great work ethic, but at the same time, he's still a pretty small guy. Payton talked about last year how it was just tough to have him in the backfield, pass protecting against blitzing linebackers. Like he's a small dude. He's not great in pass pro. So if that's something that he can fix, which is much easier said than done, then I can see a big uptick in snaps for him. Estime is currently sidelined. They're just being precautious with him. We'll see him in training camp. It's a bit of a mess, that backfield.
It does
play it at this point.
Yeah, I've been taking Javonte. I've been taking Jaleel. They're both so cheap that I think it's worth taking on some of the, like, there should be, I think it's going to be a committee, and I think both of them probably have roles, but I'd want to estimate the guy that concerns me the most. Are you buying any of the, like, Blake Watson stuff as someone that we need to have on the radar, either for maybe even if we're not drafting him, but to maybe cool off on drafting the other guys? I
mean, certainly on the radar, and especially because he's the most unclicked player in that backfield. So that helps us out to scroll down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Payton's talked about Audric Estime as a skill set where he can be out there grinding on first and second down. And then he talks about Blake Watson saying, hey, I'm not saying he's Alvin Kamara, but let me tell you about all these Alvin Kamara qualities that he has to him.
Yeah, classic. I know that made me a little nervous. This one is like I kind of want to be in on the guys I've seen. Yeah. Let's talk on other backfields because I saw you had up today the Rams a quote with Sean McVay talking about Blake Corum and how impressed he is with Blake Corum. Kyren Williams, I just am writing up a post on the running backs in the early rounds, and I was like, man, Kyren was really efficient as a runner last year. I know a lot of it was driven by, him just getting all the work. But like, it would be kind of surprised. I know, and he didn't have any pedigree, and he's small, and he got banged up. So on the one hand, not surprising at all if they give some of the work to someone else. On the other hand, like, the bar is actually maybe higher than people are thinking for what Corum has to do to like really displace Kyren in a kind of meaningful way, and not just be like a compliment to him. And then as I was thinking that, Sean McVay was like, "Oh man, Blake Corum, he's pretty awesome." So we're kind of landing on Corum's chances of having like a meaningful role this year.
Yeah. So Les Snead, the Rams GM, said that the Blake Corum pick is so we don't just totally run down Kyren. The way I'm seeing this is Kyren Williams at least 70% of snap. We're probably seeing like a 70-30, right? They just wanted a guy, because you look at last year when Kyren Williams went on IR, missed 4 weeks. Sean talked about when Kyren came back, like what a different offense this is when Kyren is playing and when he's out. He couldn't trust anyone else in that backfield. McVay has a really high standard for his players and definitely for his running backs as well. And like he had to go get Darrell Henderson off the street because he knew that, this is a guy that I can at least trust back there. So they didn't have any depth behind Kyren that they could trust. This Blake Corum pick was just so, all right. They compared Blake Corum to Kyren Williams. Like we're seeing with the Titans, I think this is kind of smart to have guys who have such who have skill sets that are really similar to each other. So like there's no tipping the defense off when a certain guy is in. Like you can just keep running your offense. They don't want to miss a beat if Kyren has to miss some time. They want to give him some breathers. And there's no guarantee that Blake Watson that Blake Corum is going to be a guy that Sean McVay can trust. It certainly seems that way right now. Like it's trending in that direction. Like we're hearing the right quotes from McVay, but he's also talking about the kind of mental mistakes that Blake Corum is making during camp, and following it up with he has great mental toughness to be able to bounce back. But Kyren at the end of the third round is just such a smash. Doing 150 drafts, like, okay, so what if he gets hurt? I lost those entries. I don't give a shit. Okay, like I what about the other entry? Like what
about the other times? Yeah,
right. Yeah. So I think very smart to really get exposure to both, because if Kyren does miss time and McVay views Blake Corum as being a guy that he can trust, like we're going to see 85% of snaps going to Corum. So I think both of them at ADP is a pretty smart play.
I like that a lot. I had not been taking Kyren much in the 2-3 turn kind of range, because I'm like, he does feel it's sort of a fragile play where like he was dependent to a large extent on just getting like all the goal line stuff, being out there 80% of snaps or more.
But McVay loves to run at the goal line, and
he does. It's true.
And he sees linebacking cores getting smaller and smaller, which is why he beefed up his offensive line this year, coming in this, just like 5 huge guys. And I mean, they get on the 1, 2, 3 yard line, like they're running the ball there.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I agree. When Kyron gets to the like late third, there's been a couple tier breaks at wide receiver since, the late second. So I think he's definitely more of a target there. And I've been taking him. I just took him this. One reason that jumped out to me is I just took him this morning at, I think, like a 307 or something like that. And then I saw the Corum stuff. I was like, but I'm glad you're still in.
Yeah, I mean until training camp, right? Because we're not really going to get much more news until training camp, and people have these Blake Corum quotes fresh in their mind, and also that Kyron Williams is sidelined, but McVay said he's going to be fine. He said he's going to be a full go at training camp. He's very reliable on injury coach speak. So once training camp rolls around and we see Kyron's a full go, I expect that ADP to jump back up. Right now, it's going to slide, and it's going to be such a great time to take him.
Yeah, I definitely think, especially if you're not excited about taking Kyron at the 2-3 turn, it's all the more reason to take him now, right? Because then you get that exposure, you get some cheap exposure. Maybe it's a player you end up underweight on as part of your overall portfolio, but you did mix him in a little bit, and you mix him in at the best price available at the tournament. That sounds pretty good. JSN, another guy that's probably going to continue moving up. I mean, Mike McDaniel, he's like, well, I took him a bunch last year. I didn't love what I saw, and now I've been a little bit more bearish than some of the other analysts that I'm usually in lockstep with. But now I'm starting to kind of come around where in like this at the 6-7 turn, especially with wide receiver like about to completely dry up, I'm fine. I think he's totally fine there. My concern is, does he actually jump like a full round? Does he end up at like the 5-6 turn soon, where we don't have a ton of receivers at the 5-6 turn that we're that excited about? A lot of rookies, like Chris Godwin, not like the most like exciting profiles there. JSN, this former really exciting prospect who's like getting a ton of hype now, I think could rise to that level if this keeps up. I listened to a clip that you shared this morning, and it McDonald did mention Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and Noah Fant as like other guys that would be involved in the offense, but he said JSN would have like a massive role in the offense. So it's good. It's good. After his rookie season, it could have gone the other way. It's definitely good. Kind of like how good, how much weight do we want to put on this? If there's like a kind of a rocket ship of ADP movement, at what point are you getting off?
I mean, it's approaching that point right now. A couple of weeks ago, McDonald said, I think we've got a really cool plan for him. And then we get the quote yesterday that he's definitely going to be a massive piece of what we're trying to do offensively. Ryan Grubb is such a huge upgrade over Shane Waldron, especially for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Mm-hmm. So I think that's good for him. I think we'll see a lot less of the screen merchant stuff. Like I think we will see some of those touches, but we're going to see him used in multiple ways. And while I think that Seattle is going to be a little more run heavy than people are expecting this year, I do think they're going their EPA on passing plays is going to be much, much higher. Grubb is just so good at scheming his pass catchers open. And Metcalf and JSN, I think, could be the biggest beneficiaries of that.
At what point, like if he got to the middle of the 6th, are you starting to feel a little bit like we're overrating the coach speak at that point, or not quite?
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking Chris Godwin over him for sure. Yeah. But like, what if he's a 3rd round pick next year?
Yeah, I know. That's in the back of my mind too.
We'll be yearning for the days of 5th and 6th round JSN.
Anything you mentioned Waldron? Anything jumping out to you from the Bears, coach speak wise? Like I heard some good stuff about Rome Odunze But that was more from like beat reporters. I haven't seen too much there. And that's a situation where we're like kind of setting ourselves up to get hurt. It's like, oh, listen, guys, the Seahawks, we don't have to worry about them. Shane Waldron's gone. By the way, basically the exact same situation we had last year in Seattle with 3 receivers, and we're not sure how they're all going to get fed. Probably a better tight end, or at least one more established as a kind of every route guy in Cole Kmet, a pass catching running back, and a rookie quarterback. What could go wrong? That does, but at the same time, you have 3 really talented receivers, a top, including one of them being a top 10 overall pick this year. And so it's hard not to want to bet on this team with Caleb Williams potentially being really good right out of the gate. But it just feels like the Bears definitely set up as a team that could be very disappointing to fantasy managers one way or another. Has anything jumped out to you about what you're hearing Coachspeak wise there?
I mean, it could be possibly more than one way or another.
Yeah, it could be a few different ways. Yeah.
Several ways or several others.
Yeah.
They like Odunze a lot. It's funny. Eberflus was talking about his route running. He said it's pretty good. It's really good. It's almost exceptional. They just kept one up himself. He said that Odunze. He was asked to name a player who's really stood out during camp, and he said Odunze, which I would hope that the player that you selected 9th overall would be the one that's standing out during camp. Yeah, with Waldron, it's really tough. I do like Odunze better at ADP than Keenan Allen. I see people speculating that, what if Keenan Allen in Waldron's offense is what JSN was in Waldron's offense last year. But these coaches aren't concerned about fantasy and like who gets the ball, how much. Like Eberflus is just thrilled that he has 3 really good wide receivers, and he was talking yesterday about people want to hone in on DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, and all right, well, we got Rome Odunze, so GG, pal.
Okay, I like hearing that. I'm drafting Odunze the most. I think with this situation, taking the cheapest guy does feel like the best way to play it. But he's not that cheap. He's a 6th-round pick, so it's still going to hurt pretty bad. If Odunze,
I think him versus like Lad McConkey is really interesting.
Well, so Lad McConkey's he's getting a lot. I mean, there was just stuff today. Greg Roman saying, we're going to use him as a Swiss Army knife. He also just seemed like really psyched about him. If the vibes were good.
It's funny comparing the video of Greg Roman talking about Lad McConkey, and then the very next question they asked him about Quentin Johnston, and like the first couple of things he said was something like, "Oh, he's good. He's a good guy."
That's not ideal.
Exactly. The first thing you want to hear.
No. Yeah, but are you so like Lad? That's been one that's tough for me because you have the 9th overall pick versus a guy who's in the 2nd round and was not seen as the same level of wide receiver prospect. Even though Lad was considered a good wide receiver prospect, Rome Odunze was like clearly the number 3 prospect in the class, kind of a tier break after him, maybe a tier break before him to Neighbors, but some people had him over Neighbors. So that was more on kind of the analytics side where you would make that case. And then you have the situation where Rome goes to a very crowded offense captained by a rookie quarterback, and Lad goes to the Chargers without any receivers captained by Justin Herbert. So the situation about as different as you can get. And I guess if we didn't believe in Caleb, that would be the worst case. But still, it's a pretty wide gap in the situations between the two. It's resulted in Lad McConkey going right near Rome Odunze and potentially jumping him soon if this coach speak keeps up. Is that one that you feel like could be justified if we keep getting this drumbeat out of Chargers camp on Lad?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the opportunity in that room, people are expecting the Chargers to run at like a 98% clip. Like that's not going to happen. Maybe they run a little bit more than we want, but like they have Justin Herbert. They realize that. They realize how good he is. And then you look at the receiving options, like there's just not a ton there. Like Josh Palmer, whatever, he's okay. Quentin Johnston, great guy.
He's a great guy.
I mean, McConkey's one of the best route runners in this wide receiver class. Like, I think, pair that with how good Justin Herbert is, and yeah, like we'll probably see a lot of targets for him this year.
The backfields for the Chargers is another one, and it's the great guy type comment. We got that on J.K. Dobbins from Greg Roman, where he said, what are you feeling about J.K. Dobbins? And he was like, he's looking great. I think if you asked him, he would tell you he's not all the way back. Like, don't put this on me, but he's not. Yeah. Even he would say he's not all the way back.
Greg Roman knows about Coachspeak Index.
Yeah, I think he does.
Doesn't want to put back on him.
Yeah, he goes. You know what I love about JK is vision. His vision. He's out there. He's looking. He's making the right decisions. That's. I'm like, I don't want to hear about JK's head. I would like to hear about his body and legs. Specifically. So I didn't hear a lot that said JK has a lot of bursts. JK is looking healthy. And
although he did say that, absolutely for sure, I can see him regaining his rookie form. Because that's the question that was posed to him. Like, can you see him regaining that rookie form? And he was like, that's how he started out his answer. Was like, yeah, absolutely. But then he says, yeah, it's just a matter of him getting back up to speed physically, and hopefully we can keep him there because he's a huge asset for us.
Yeah. So I haven't heard. So, that in some ways that's positive. In some ways it feels like someone deflecting on a player who's not healthy yet. And he's just not ready to say what they can do, because it just comes down to if he's healthy or not. And they don't know yet.
Right.
But the Vidal situation is really interesting because he's going not like extremely expensively in best ball drafts, but he's going like in every draft, and he's not going in the very last round. I haven't really heard any. I'm like from Daniel Popper Vidal. Like that's where I'm at on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And it's like the Chargers drafted Kimani Vidal. Like that was a month ago, Daniel. anything since then? So it's been very quiet. Someone tagged me on Discord noting that Harbaugh tried to recruit Isaiah Spiller. I was like, oh no! Like if it's Isaiah Spiller, yeah, I'm in trouble. So and then Gus Edwards, I think I haven't heard a ton about him, but that's fine because he's sort of a status quo.
There is news that just came out today from Harbaugh. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch the press conference yet, but let me pull this up. Gus Edwards is injured. Jim Harbaugh expects him likely to be back by training camp.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get
sound of Kimani Vidal being clicked.
yeah.
DM drafts. And I want to
leave the pod on. Go. You can open the draft. Okay.
Yeah. I want to congratulate you, by the way, on pronouncing Kimani Vidal's last name correctly. Everyone's saying Vidal, and it really annoys me.
Here's the trick is, and I'm a big highlights defender. Okay, it's supposed to be fun. We're allowed to go watch highlights. The good plays. Sometimes I see people like doing all 22, and they're like, check out these 5 plays. I'm like, you just made a highlight video. Like I've seen all these plays. They're on the highlights.
Just bomb productions.
Yeah. I watched them with some sweet music underneath. You're sitting in silence.
I was getting hyped.
Yeah. So the other thing that's nice about the highlights is they say the players' names, so you actually get to know how to pronounce the players' name. So, the little defense for the highlights. That's how I realized how how to pronounce Vidal's name. Also, Dane Brugler in The Beast actually goes and tells you how to pronounce the names, which is extremely helpful. Yeah, so I guess we'll kind of wait and see on there. But I saw you had Vidal listed a few days ago as a player you felt better about because of Coachspeak, but I hadn't seen much on him. What has jumped out to you about him?
Yeah, that was actually GM speak. That was Joe Ortiz after the draft. The Chargers haven't had a lot of press conferences this offseason. And I know during the season, head coaches are mandated to have press conferences and speak with the press 3 times a week, and OCs is 2 times a week, or assistant coaches. I don't think there's anything like that during the off-season programs. So we've gotten very few press conferences from Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, and no one has asked them about Gus Edwards or Kimani Vidal, just J.K. Dobbins.
Maybe do that, Chargers beats, please. Yeah. We would love to know. It seems like kind of obvious to me, but all right.
I mean, Harbaugh had like a 27-minute press conference the other day. I was like, oh boy, we're about to get some good stuff here. Nothing.
Are you watching these on like 2X? Like, how are you getting through all these? Okay.
Yeah. I'm watching him on 2X. I have a really good ear for, all right, this is really juicy, important information. And, once we get to a question that's like beyond defensive players and whatever, it's like, all right, now we can do 1X speed. But yeah, got to do the 2X speed. There's, once we get to regular season, it's 40 plus hours of press conferences per week, including the post-game press conferences. So yeah, got to do the 2X.
Yeah. Okay. I was worried.
But like intonation, body language, all that stuff is I find really important. I've also been tracking like poker tells from head coaches. So yeah, definitely slow it down to regular speed for that stuff, because the Dan Campbell, Brock Wright, it's intonation, it's timing. Like there's a lot to glean there.
100%. I mean, Dan Campbell, like I was one of the takes I'm proudest of is that I didn't jump on the Dan Campbell's an idiot train. Part of it was that I got assigned the Roto-World Lions preview that year. And because I would have without kind of digging into it, and I wouldn't have dug into it unless someone made me. But I went and watched the press conference. I was like, this guy's kind of awesome. And then I went and listened to the pod that he did. Well, I think it was on Pardon My Take. And he's like talking, he's like they're pitching him dumb ideas and he's rolling with it. And he's like, here's a dumb idea. Like, what do we have a line on a big ass chain? And like this guy's hilarious. Like he's joking around. He understands the bit. He's having a good time. Like, and he kept talking in the same press conference about biting kneecaps. He was talking about like player empowerment, putting in place coaches who like have a good relationship with the players, how that's so important, how much he learned under Sean Payton. And I'm like, this seems pretty like, not that I was like, oh, Dan Campbell's going to be a smash, but I was like, let's keep an open mind. Like this guy actually seems pretty interesting to me. But that was all from just going and actually listening to and watching Dan Campbell, as opposed to the little clip where this the kneecap guy. Let's just write him off because he said we're going to bite kneecaps.
Yeah, this is the guy that drinks 18 shots of espresso in his coffee. That was another big clip. Yeah, Dan Campbell gets it, man. He's sharp.
Yeah,
you see it on his fourth down decisions. You see it in his press conferences, the way he talks about players and like the type of team that they want to have. Like it's so important to him. The other day, really incredible clip about somebody asked him about players in a contract year, playing better because they're in a contract year. And he said, if they're doing that here, like we have the wrong guy. Like they got to be playing at that level no matter what year it is in their contract. And he said, Brad Holmes and I have done a really good job of making sure that we have the right players. So I don't think you're going to find those kinds of guys here.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's great.
That's very cool. Let's I haven't done this twice now, but let's move from one coach who is just a well of positivity to the well of negativity. Dennis Allen.
Dennis Allen?
Yeah, this is Dennis Allen. Yeah. You have like a treasure trove of clips of him just not being very nice about his player. But is he honest? Do you trust what he says?
He's all over the place, really.
Okay.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that, I mean, he'll on injuries, he's just like such a smokescreen kind of guy. On depth chart, like completely unreliable. But then somehow player usage and workload, he's like pretty reliable. He's all over, and that really encompasses the type of person, or the like psychological profile of this guy. I mean, the only offensive player that he has like not had a bad thing to say about this season is Jamal Williams.
What? Jamal Williams, though, I mean, they've asked
him Chris Olave. I mean, he's like, we got to get Jamal Williams the ball.
Oh no!
Hey man, he's at the bottom of like every single metric last season.
Not hard.
And the one time he got the ball last year was when you didn't want him to have the ball on that touchdown.
God, yeah. What has he said about like Olave? And I know he was talking negatively about A.T. Perry, which just seems kind of
my
mean.
God, A.T. buried. Olave was just talking about, hey, there's a lot of stuff we need to improve on with Chris.
Jeez,
like, man. Yeah, he's weird, man. I don't think he'll ever get another head coaching job.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost sort of surprising he got this one, and then he's held on to it for a while. But yeah, not trying to engender the same kind of team camaraderie that Dan Campbell is. It seems fair to say.
Yeah, I want these reporters to just ask him about more. Like they haven't asked him about Rashid Shaheed. I'm very curious what he'll say about him. And
no, I'm drafting too much. I don't want to hear what Dennis Allen has to say.
Oh yeah, Kendre Miller was another one that was like, we need to see a lot more consistency from this guy. Need to see more out of him.
All right. When you say that and then you talk up Jamal Williams, that makes me a little nervous.
I mean, to me, that like signals maybe we shouldn't listen to much of what this guy is saying.
Yeah, right. Just unreliable.
Yeah.
One guy. So a running back we are hearing some hype on is Ty Chandler. He's. I feel like they keep. So Ty. I guess maybe we could kind of compare and contrast the Ty Chandler, Aaron Jones situation with MarShawn Lloyd and Josh Jacobs. Matt LaFleur has been pretty consistent where like it's almost like I've kind of made jokes that like they'll ask him about like, hey, like how's Christian Watson's hamstring? And he's like, yeah, we're going to run a committee at running back. You know, it's like not he just is insistent and bringing it up kind of out of nowhere. But we're hearing similar and well, to finish that point, the market has reacted to that. Josh Jacobs has fallen a lot. And, MarShawn Lloyd is not like skyrocketed up, but he's risen a bit on that news with Jacobs really falling. We are kind of hearing some similar stuff out of the Vikings where Chandler like beats, and this is probably more from beats that I've seen this, but they're like, yeah, expect Chandler to have like a legit role. Like he's not just going to be a backup. So do you kind of feel like maybe the market's missing this Viking situation is actually being kind of similar to the Packers one where we should expect a committee?
Yeah, I think we're looking at probably 65-35 in favor of Aaron Jones. Kevin O'Connell talked about, hey, he's 29, his history of hamstring and knee injuries. Like we're going to be smart with him. Like obviously we're going to use him and we love what he can do on the ground and also in the passing game for us. But Aaron Jones is on a 1-year deal there. So like maybe they run him into the ground a little bit more. But O'Connell really, really loves Ty Chandler. Been talking him up, through like the middle of last season.
Mm-hmm.
Chandler, doesn't project, he's a smaller guy, doesn't really project as kind of a workhorse, even if something were to, like, he was never going to be their RB1, going into week 1. But let's say like something happens to Aaron Jones. Like I don't see Ty Chandler becoming a workhorse there, but I do see him getting a good amount of work, if not just to, keep Aaron Jones healthy for them for later in the season.
Yeah, and I think, Aaron Jones, I feel like is a perfectly fine pick, maybe even a pretty good pick going in like the 7th, sometimes 8th round. And you can kind of build around, like, he's the 1A at least, so you can almost take him like he was a 2020 3rd round pick, and kind of build around him a little bit more. I've been experimenting with thinking, like, can I take no running backs through 6 rounds and then grab like 4 running backs and be done, in a way that, like, you used to not in the 7th round, it used to be like upside, 1B type, pass catcher. This is like clear-cut starter in the 7th round. So
there's so many guys who project for 60-70% of snaps who are going in these later rounds. It's pretty crazy.
It is.
You build some monster 0 RB teams.
You really can. Yeah. It's crazy. It's honestly, it's like hard to stay on track, because I do think there's some values early on, but then there's also, like, one guy would be Devin Singletary, where the touches have never been cheaper. Like, in the history of fantasy football, like, the amount of touches that we could project for Devin Singletary early season has never been priced cheaper. But we are starting to hear some Tyrone Tracey hype. He was running with the ones yesterday, I believe. Dayball's talked him up as, like, knowing the play. At first, the stuff I was seeing from Dayball was like, he's a rookie, and I basically had no expectations of him knowing what to do, and he kind of did know what to do. That was pretty cool. But then it's like kind of started to progress to, like, and we're also liking what we're seeing out of him. This is beginning to feel like the early stages of a training camp drumbeat on Tracey. Are you kind of picking that up too?
Yeah. What's really notable in the most recent clip of Dayball talking about Tyrone Tracey, like, he wasn't being asked about Tyrone Tracey. He was being asked about the running back room, and he starts off with Devin Singletary, and then he goes to Tyrone Tracey, and Eric Gray didn't really get a mention there. So that's definitely on my radar. Singletary is going in the triple digit.
He's very cheap. He's very cheap.
Very cheap. Touches have never been cheaper is like the Devin Singletary motto, I feel, for the last few years.
It really has, yeah. Yeah. And the thing about Singletary does make me nervous, like, if I'm betting on the one hand, you're taking Tyrone Tracey, who also, like, he has some kick returning ability. He's got receiving ability, so he could come in in a part-time role. It's not like he has to just take the full job. But Devin Singletary does just kind of, like, take all the snaps. Like, that's sort of his superpower. So it makes me a little bit nervous betting against him. But the nice thing is, like, you don't have to. You can take Singletary in the double-digit rounds, and you can mix in Tyrone Tracey. I did dabble with Eric Gray. I think that experiment's over once. It was like, it did occur to me of, like, Eric Gray is the Giants RB3. Does that have any interest? No, none.
Yeah,
0.
that's the experimenting in college phase.
Yeah, exactly. Another kind of uncertain backfield, the Cowboys. This one, my read on it has been these guys don't seem to be freaking out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, they seem perfectly fine with their backfield. Their OC Schottenheimer seemed like thrilled with the fact that they're going to be doing running back by committee. Both he and Mike McCarthy have said, yeah, it's going to be running back by committee. It's going to be 2 or 3 guys that we're fine with in a running back by committee, and they're loving it.
There's been some speculation that, like, okay, if Miles Sanders were to be cut or become available for a conditional 7th, or P. Ryan gets cut, or whoever, Khalil Herbert, are the Cowboys just waiting for that to happen? And obviously we don't have any way of knowing, but like, I guess I came away from some of these clips that you're sharing on them as like, okay, they don't, like, that certainly could happen, but it doesn't seem like they're, waiting for the starter to arrive.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we hear about, Khalil Herbert, Damian Pierce, Miles Sanders, like that's really just kind of wish casting, I think, from people who are, God, please let us get a real RB1 in Dallas. They're not as concerned about that. And yeah, the McCarthy quote, by the way, was, whether it's 2 or whether it's 3, to be honest with you, the players will determine that. And then on Dowdle, he said he's definitely one of the lead guys in the room. So, it's him and Zeke. Schottenheimer's quote was, we're very, very comfortable and confident that it's going to work out really well for us.
Are you taking Zeke and Dowdle, or is that's kind of what I'm doing?
Yeah, I'm taking more Dowdle.
Yeah,
Zeke is
me too.
Such a disgusting click.
Like, he's so cheap.
I got to take a shower right after.
I know. Sometimes I take both. I will occasionally build like a 5 running back.
Zeke in a shower.
I take Zeke in the shower. Exactly. Yeah, that's the only way.
It's a new stream.
You feel okay about it. You can go like 2 running backs, and especially like if I haven't spent a ton. So like, let's say I went like Ramondre, Jalen Warren, and then I grab both Cowboys backs, and then I take like a Tyrone Tracey, and I'm done. So I have essentially, like, I'm really just betting on 3. It's a hyper fragile team, but Cowboys running back is one of my running backs.
And you're really hoping they don't somebody ever trade for
no. Yeah, and I've made a bet then that they don't bring in Herbert, because that's going to hurt. But I also take a lot of Dowdle just on his own.
I thought he looked pretty decent last year.
I did too. Yeah, kind of a paper thin resume, but
yeah, I watched a lot of games at I was living in Vegas at the time, so I'd go to the casino, and TV's a little bit further away, but big screens, and Dowdle would be running. I was like, oh, nice little game there for Tony Pollard. Which maybe that says more about Tony Pollard than it does Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, Pollard is one on the Titans side. They've been, I mean, they seem very upfront about what they're doing with the receivers. They, Traylon Burks is, helping them clean up after team meetings. They're really excited about his ability to do that. It's like, okay, we get it. It's Hopkins, it's Ridley, it's Boyd in the slot. But they've been talking a lot about the running backs as pass catchers, and that's been kind of interesting. It's made me honestly a little bit more interested in Spears, the cheaper of the 2. But then Pollard's falling on, I guess, on this news, or just him not being a very fun click. You can get Pollard at like 105, 106. He slides like sometimes really far. So I am taking some of him too. But do you have like a good feel on what they're playing in the backfield?
I feel like I have a good feel. I right now I'm predicting a 60-40 split in favor of Pollard, maybe 55-45. But their OC Nick Holtz called them interchangeable. 1A, 1B running backs. Brian Callahan, their new head coach, has really been talking them up, and he was actually the first person to talk about how interchangeable they are at the I think it was at the owners meeting. But yeah, he's been talking about how he wants to use them in the pass game. He wants to, screens, but also getting them matched up and running routes against linebackers. Tennessee's going to throw the ball so much this season. Like, I don't think people are prepared for their pass rate. And yeah, it just seemed really important to them that they have this kind of interchangeable backfield. So, again, like no real tipping off the defense of, all right, this guy's in, and this is like probably more likely of something that they're going to do on this play. Pollard dropping, love that. But Spears still usually going a couple rounds later.
Yeah, still very
probably going to see. Yeah, probably going to see more targets and receptions this year out of him. Got a little bit more juice, I'd say, than Pollard. So really, really liking that value. But yeah, still also in on Pollard if we're talking triple digits here.
We talk, coach speak, and I know you put a lot of work into the guy, figuring out which of these coaches we can trust, their personalities, their tells. What about player speak? What about teammate speak? Because we had a quote from Davante Adams on Brock Bowers that was shared with me by the
we reached the Brock Bowers portion of the show. Let's go.
The Brock Bowers hype is getting pretty juicy. So here's the quote from Adams. First of all, he's given him the name BM, which I don't.
Incredible.
But it stands for businessman. Okay. So, yeah. But that could have come up with a better nickname, I think. But
yeah. Well, here's the quote. Like Jay-Z said, I'm not a bowel movement. I'm a businessman.
Because he doesn't care about anything else other than just locking in on football. And I can see it in his eyes. I definitely know what he's about. I've seen the tape. He's a big, strong dude, and he's focused and driven. The sky's the limit for him. This is from a route running technician in Davante Adams. That's pretty exciting to me. But I don't know. Does Adams just talk that way about everybody? Does it give everyone little weird nicknames? Like, do you put any stock in that kind of stuff?
I don't put a ton of stock into it. I mean, Calvin Ridley a few weeks ago was talking about like how incredible and impressive Treylon Burks is.
Come on, let me have that.
Yeah,
you don't gotta take that away.
If it's something that just like really, really lines up perfectly with what coaches have been saying, like, okay, like, sure, we'll put it in that same bucket here, I guess. Not the same bucket, but it's not bad, right?
Right.
To hear that. I mean, but I'm not usually looking to players.
They have different incentives, they don't, and no one's gonna come back at them later and say, "You said a bunch of nice things about this teammate who's bad." I'd
much rather. I mean, obviously coaches, but then also, if let's say coaches, beat reporters, and players are saying the same thing about a guy, like, okay, we got really great signals here.
We kind of have that with Adonai Mitchell a little bit, right? Where he seems to have had a strong pre-training camp period at the very least. Is that is that hype kind of moving the needle for you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe how late he was going in drafts when I was drafting about a month ago. He was in like the 117-ish range.
He's still kind of there. It's like he's moved up a little.
I love it. I mean, Steichen was super fired up to get him where they got him in the draft. I understand the trepidation that people had about his profile and whatnot coming out, but I mean, if he can work with anyone. If anyone can really get him on the right track, it's I think it's a Shane Steichen type coach, just like a wizard, right? And just a guy, another guy that really gets it. And taking over that Alec Pierce role, which hopefully he does. We don't see too much Pierce. Just lines up really well for that offense. I mean, it could be a really, really dangerous offense between Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman Jr., and I think Jelani Woods, who's a pretty great late tight end click. But yeah, Pittman going a little bit too high.
You're with me on this. Okay. I think Pittman's one of the worst clicks on the board.
It's man,
I
like
just don't get it.
Third round. It's really tough for a guy who you don't typically see many 20+ point weeks out of, which you kind of want in early in the third round there.
Yeah.
Mitchell, like he's going to be their deep threat guy. Hopefully Richardson can hit him. Small sample size last year, but not the most accurate deep passer. But at that range in the 10th round or 11th round, I mean, you can stack him with Richardson and just take him by, like he could. Maybe he busts. It's probably more likely that he busts, right? But I mean, there's also like a pretty decent chance that he hits, and getting him at that spot. And then if you're, drafting well in the other areas, other rounds, like he can give you more than enough to pay off his ADP, I think.
I think so too. And I think what you're asking for from that price tag is, if he hits a few spike weeks, especially if you have it correlated with Richardson, you're paying off the tag. It's just a much lower bar.
The Giants week 17.
I mean, Richardson is not super expensive. All the kind of elite quarterbacks, I think, are fairly affordable compared to last year. And it sets up very nicely. You can take Richardson. You have plenty of time to kind of line up the AD pick. They fall kind of usually on the same side of the board. So it's been one that I've been, and I take Josh Downs too. So you can get a double stack with it. Now, you mentioned Jelani Woods. I definitely have my eye on Woods. The stuff that I saw from Steichen, like they asked him about Woods, and it didn't strike me as super bullish. And sort of like they were like, talk about Jelani Woods, and he was like, okay, like it didn't. I was sort of like, I'm glad he's back out there. I'm glad he's still big and athletic, but I still am kind of like nervous about, like how, like he kind of disappeared last year with, I believe, a hamstring injury in a way that I thought was like almost concerning, like kind of getting shut down for the year. And then they have a bunch of other tight ends. So like, what's his path to getting like a full snap share? But it sounds like you've seen a little bit more to be bullish on him.
Yeah, well, they asked Steichen, I think, at the owners' meetings about, like, would you like to have a bell cow tight end? Like, do you think it's important to have a bell cow tight end? Like, yeah. It's nice to have. Like, I like the guys that we have, and it's really funny because, and this is one of the really fun parts of running the Coachspeak Index is that I tweeted that video, and one person responded. This is a Brock Bowers tweet because it was before the draft. And then another person responded, this is a Jelani Woods tweet. Which I saw the same thing with Mike McDaniel recently on the running back room, same video, multiple responses. One, this is a Jalen Wright tweet. This is Raheem Mostert tweet. This is Devon Achane tweet. Love it. But his most recent quote a couple weeks ago on Jelani Woods, Steichen said, a big-bodied tight end that can run the vertical routes, run the shallows, run the deep cross. It's awesome to see. Obviously, he's a matchup for a defense that they got to be prepared for.
That's nice.
Yeah, he's not I mean, he's not a guy that in redraft I'm looking to run out there on a weekly basis. But if I'm doing, I mean, to me, a really great like 3 tight end build is Brock Bowers, Jonnu Smith, Jelani Woods, something in that area.
So is Smith the
like
guy
really
that
high upside on these guys?
Has Smith jumped out to you, Coachspeak wise?
Yes. Yeah. Mike McDaniel, June 4th, 2024. They asked him about his use of tight ends, right? They haven't really used them much. And McDaniel said some people think that just whatever it was, it will always be. That, just because we didn't use tight ends in the past.
McDaniel, man.
he is. People assume that. Oh, you must love watching Mike McDaniel press conferences. It's actually annoying if we're being honest. He tries a little too hard with his jokes and whatnot. Usually at the very beginning of press conferences, opening.
He should just try yes. Try out the word yes. Try out the word no. Try out the word. Next question.
Oh my dude, let me pull up. Let me pull up. I gotta pull up this. The
running back one.
The running back one from.
This was insane. I mean,
not the most recent. Okay, so I have both up. The one right after the draft, they asked him about the competition in the Miami backfield. He said, "I think all players benefit for their supreme urgency to do right with the ball if you deserve to have it."
What the hell does that mean?
This is like a strict 1920s businessman, father of 8, talking to his kids.
What is he doing?
Oh man, he's a character.
No, give me the other one. Give us the other one.
Yeah, the most recent one. They asked him again, "Hey, how about that running back room?" I'm paraphrasing. That wasn't how they phrased it.
Want to say something normal about your running backs?
Yeah. Hey, we're going to give you another shot. Take two. Take 2, Mike. He said the whole group, pretty much led by Raheem, it is of quality and depth, as good as I've been around. I've literally spent 0 time trying to forecast that room because I recognize supreme competition when I see it. This guy was trying to get a sponsorship, I think, with Supreme. The great news is, instead of saying what I believe or forecast, I get to just watch and allow the players to determine all that for us.
Oh, man. It's just so long compared to what, we've got a lot of competition in that room.
Yeah.
You're done.
But he is a smart coach, offensive genius. He's right that we shouldn't just suppose, hey, offense looked like this last year, it's automatically going to look like this year. Like, that's all dependent on personnel that they have. They didn't have a third receiving threat last year, and Jonnu Smith in this offense, I mean, fits in really well with all the yak guys that they have. I mean, we saw Jonnu destroy in Tennessee. Didn't do much in New England, but then popped off again last year for Atlanta. Like, we know what he's capable of. We know he's capable of putting up just really big numbers on like not too many targets. So with defenses having to keep their eyes on Tyreek and Waddle and Achane and it really opens things up for Jonnu.
Yeah, and the Arthur Smith scheme is kind of within this Shanahan tree as well. So he's succeeded when in a similar type of offense. So I like that one. I've been taking a fair amount of Jonnu actually, so happy to hear that. Yeah, he's very cheap. When you see something like that with McDaniel and the running backs, and I'm asking as someone who's taking a lot of Achane right now, does that make he seems like he's being cagey, but why? Is it because he's actually has a plan? Or is it because he literally has no idea what he's going to do yet? is he trying to like actually lower expectations for Achane because he doesn't really see him as a lead back and wants to just, because the only guy he actually mentioned by name there is Mostert. So I don't know. I'm trying to like, is there anything to read into there, or is he just like basically not? Is it just a guy who doesn't really want to answer the question, and so he's saying a lot of big words back to back?
Yeah, I mean, this is just kind of typical Mike McDaniel coach speak. Like, he doesn't usually give a lot away. He's the same way with like injury timelines. If it's more than
he's been like really bad with injury timelines, right?
I mean, he's been bad in terms of like letting us know when, hey, I expect this guy back in a month or something like that. He doesn't usually provide us with timelines beyond 1 or 2 weeks, really.
Okay.
But when he does, like, pretty reliable, and then he has certain language matches in the database, which is another big thing that I look for, because these coaches aren't poets. Well, maybe Mike McDaniel is. Yeah. Obviously he is, but we all have our vocabulary sets, right? We all have our phrases that we use, and much of that is kind of subconscious. So when they say, good chance of suiting up versus like really good chance of suiting up, like I like to go back in the database and take a look at, like, all right, I know the overall reliability rating, but what is it like with this certain phrase right here? So yeah, doesn't like to give a ton away, actually, in terms of scheme. It's just like, hey, you nerds figure it out. But Raheem Mostert, I mean, 32 years old. By the time the fantasy playoffs come around, he's going to be very close to 33. He's been healthy for, I think, 3 of the past 7 seasons, and that's including, I believe, the past 2. People ask, they're so afraid of taking Achane. What if Achane gets hurt? Like, who thinks Achane's staying healthy?
I literally saw this. Yeah, someone, I believe, hit me up with who thinks Achane's staying healthy, because I took a ton of them. I think we lost Greg here, or we lost me. Okay. Are you back? Yeah. I was saying, I think that was me, actually. Someone hit me with, do you really think Achane can stay healthy? But yeah, it's like, do you think Mostert could just as easily get hurt?
Are we back?
Yep.
Was that me?
I think so.
Oh no.
It's always possible it's me. I have a history of internet issues.
Yeah. So sorry. Going back to it on Achane. Like, what if Achane stays healthy the entire season?
Right.
What if he sees a 60% snap share? What if he sees 70%? Like, he won't.
I think we're gonna like that in the 3rd round. That sounds pretty good to me.
He won't maintain the same efficiency as last year.
If he does, the season's over. They're going to shut down.
Yeah, I mean,
we can't handle that.
Like, this is a guy who could put up Christian McCaffrey numbers. It's entirely possible. He's incredible.
Yep,
and
I completely agree.
Like, why are we letting him fall?
I don't know.
We're not all just doing one draft. Like, we're playing in a lot of leagues, and in best ball, like, a lot of us are maxing out. Whatever. Like, some guys are going to get injured. Sure. All right. What about all these other teams that I have that these guys stay healthy? You just keep taking shots at huge upside guys, and that's going to pay off.
I completely agree.
There's like really no other running back besides McCaffrey, Breece Hall, maybe Bijan, who has just such a high ceiling as Devon Achane.
And that also think, I mean, people understand better in best ball to some extent, now, the wide receiver archetypes and stuff. People cite those all the time. It's almost a bit, but the weekly ceiling that Achane provides is better in best ball. Well, it's better in, it's funny. It's not necessarily better in best ball versus redraft in terms of you starting them. It's better in not a 12-team league and trying to beat hundreds of people in a single week. It's better in tournament. And I think people maybe are still not fully internalizing that part of it. It's like, if you get a guy who can just, I mean, dude, he dropped a PPR 50 burger in his third start or something. He dropped a 50 burger. Like that's it. It's over. You need him. You need him. If in week 17 you get that kind of outcome, and obviously, that's not the most likely outcome, but that kind of a demonstrated ceiling from a rookie is very, very encouraging. The type of thing we want to be targeting. I guess for me on the coach speak, like I would need to have McDaniel be like, we just don't trust him. Like that. You're gonna have to tell me he's not the answer before I'm out. Achane is basically he's losing a tie. This exact same percentage drafted with Jaylen Warren right now is my highest drafted running back. I've drafted slightly more dollars on Warren. So Achane, my second most drafted running back. Warren, my first. I haven't found this quote, but someone told me that Arthur Smith at one point said they were going to have 550 carries this season.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
Maybe that was yesterday. Yeah, I tweeted.
Okay.
Out. He said I think they asked him just about the running back room and like how it'll be split up or whatever. And he said that you're looking at 1,100 plays for the season. And then, he said, we didn't give Derrick Henry 550 carries. So just immediately suggesting that 50% run rate. Like we already knew this was going to be one of the run heaviest teams in the league.
Right.
They went out and they drafted an offensive lineman with their first round pick. And just, traditionally they like to run the ball. And then we know Arthur Smith's history with running the ball. And last year without him, Najee Harris saw almost 300 touches, Jaylen Warren 210 touches, and now enter Arthur Smith and an improved offensive line. This is a guy who loves thumpers, which is why we saw Tyler Algier get so much run last year. He likes a big thumping running back. Derrick Henry, Tyler Algier, Cordero Patterson, who's in Pittsburgh. The one thing that did kind of scare me was Arthur Smith said he was saying we're gonna run the ball. We're gonna run it in traditional ways and non-traditional ways. And when he said non-traditional ways, I was just like, oh my God, this is Cordero Patterson.
Oh, no. We don't want Patterson. Please no Patterson. Yeah. It's got to be over now. Najee Harris, I haven't drafted a ton of, but I think he's a good pick and someone I'm actually trying to draft a little more of. To your point on him preferring a thumper, there should be plenty of work for Harris. I believe that Smith wants to use Harris, and he's pretty cheap. So I think he's a totally fine pick. Warren, I'm just like, I think he's really good. I think his rushing efficiency was awesome last year. His receiving efficiency has been good for 2 years. And so I'm just like, give him sufficient work and I'm in. If you mentioned like a 50% run rate, that would be the lowest in the league last year. Baltimore was at 50.8%. Chicago is at 51%. So, obviously that's not exact, but he's basically saying we want to be one of the most run-heavy teams in the league. Atlanta last year was at 52%. So he hasn't changed. He's not he's trying to run the same type of offense, it sounds like. If they do, there should be plenty of work for both guys. And in that case, I want to bet on the more talented player who I see as Warren. Do you kind of see that there should be at least a chance for Warren to show what he can do, even if Najee is like the 1A again?
Yeah. I mean, going back to the thumper thing, like both of these guys, bigger body, like just strong running backs.
Warren's really 215. He's not little.
Yeah, he's thick. So I'm sure Arthur Smith is going to be enamored with both of them. I do wonder about red zone, like who's going to be the back, who's used in the red zone.
Yeah, that might be a bit more Najee. Yeah.
Yeah. One quick thing I'll point out, and this is more for if you're playing DFS, this is something you really want to kind of bookmark and keep tucked away in your mind, is that after the Week 18 game last year at Baltimore, really nasty weather game, lot of rain, and they asked Mike Tomlin, because Najee Harris saw like all the work in that game, like not a ton for Jaylen Warren. And they asked Tomlin, why did you use Najee so much? Was it, was the weather a factor, and why you used him so much? And he said, yeah, like when the weather gets nasty, we give the ball to Najee, and Najee carried the ball 26 times for 112 yards and a touchdown, and added 5 catches for 21 yards. So if we is that Week 17 game at Pittsburgh or Kansas City?
That's a good question. I think that might really matter now. What about him? Is he just like? Is
he a mutter?
Is he a mutter? Yeah. Good Lord. Hang on. Let's see. Is it in Pittsburgh or not? No, that's last year. It's at Pittsburgh.
All right. Let's break out the Farmer's Almanac.
Oh, no.
What weather's supposed to be that day.
All right. That's kind of bullish for Najee, you got to say. You know?
Cold weather, nasty game.
Yeah. we can't be targeting Jaylen Warren because it might be rainy. No, but I mean, honestly, I think they're both good picks. So yeah, I just have a really hard time not clicking Warren because I really believe in the profile. But Najee showed something last year that he hadn't so far. He was pretty good. Yeah. So it was an encouraging season for him, and now he enters a situation that's probably close to ideal for his skill set. So as I'm taking a lot of Warren, I don't want to put blinders on and ignore that Najee is actually a pretty damn good pick too.
Right. People are so afraid to dip into these backfields where it's looking like 50-50, 55-45. But when you've got to consider, okay, well, this offense is going to run the ball a lot more, and like they're probably going to get a lot more checkdowns from Russell Wilson than other teams, right? So I'd rather have a 45% Jaylen Warren than a 60% Gus Edwards.
Me too. Yeah. Let me ask about a couple of backfields that like maybe aren't splits that people are worried might be. The one is the Bucks with Rachaad White falling. But I saw you had some stuff on Bucky Irving, maybe, not being ready as a pass protector and that limiting how much he actually plays this year. And then the other's the Cardinals, which this was from Kyler Murray, so not coach speak, but he was really talking up James Conner as an important part of their offense. They obviously drafted Trey Benson, but Conner is, if he is the lead back for the Falcons, and he's older, there is a threat, a guy who could steal work down the stretch, but he was very good last year and pretty cheap if he is actually their lead back. What are your thoughts on how those backfields end up splitting out?
Starting with the Cardinals, absolutely, James Conner is their lead back. And just going back to Jonathan Gannon at the season end press conference at the end of last season. They asked him about James Conner turning 29 next season. And he said, if you think that certain guys start to fall off because they get a little older, he'd be the one to delay it. I know that. He loves James Conner. And their OC Drew Petzing does as well. Like this is their guy. And I find it really surprising that Trey Benson is going so high in drafts right now. I get the contingent value that if something happens to James Conner, which has happened many times in his career, then Trey Benson, go Burr. But I don't see anything close to like a 50-50 or even like 60-40. I don't think workload is as long as James Conner is healthy. What the other one? Which was the other room?
What did I just ask you about? The Bucks.
Yeah. So the Bucks is really interesting. Todd Bowles in February said we'd definitely like to have another back in here to take some of the weight off. And then in March, about Rachaad White, said he started playing faster because he was playing smarter. He became a very good all-around football player, and there's not too many of them in the league like that right now. Todd Bowles, very like no bullshit kind of guy. So I my ears definitely perk up when he talks. And then Liam Cohen in last month was talking about both of the backs and how he wants them to be quick to the hole, which Rachaad White was much too patient last season in hitting the hole. And Cohen's just saying he's taken every detail that we've coached throughout the offseason and applied it. And I'll just give you his quote real quick here. In that same clip was the nice thing I like about Bucky is he gets to his top speeds early. Like when he accepts the handoff, he bursts and accelerates through the hole and can make people miss in space. And that is right after that is when we saw, Bucky Irving ADP really shoot up because people hated Rachaad White's efficiency numbers last year and previously. But making this point, Bucky Irving, I think, is like 190 pounds. One of the worst pass protectors in this class. The most carries that a sub 200-pound running back has seen in Todd Bowles' 6 years as a head coach is 3 carries in a season. Now, Bucky Irving probably get more than 3 carries. But yeah, 23.6 pass blocking grade last year, 11th percentile of running backs. And I mean, Todd Bowles is an absolute hard ass. Not many coaches will put a liability back there in the backfield. Todd Bowles is definitely one of those guys that won't be about that. And Liam Cohen coming from the Rams and the Sean McVay tree, you got to block. You got to be able to block. And looking at the fact that the Tampa Bay offensive line, not the best O-line in the league, so the running back, helping out back there is very important to them. So yeah, I'm pretty bearish on Bucky Irving.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I've definitely been at the same time, like, can Irving get in there and get some early down stuff, given how poor White was as a rusher? That's kind of where I've been on it, where I'm like, he literally had, if you look at NFL Next Gen stats, White was dead last in rush yards over expected, minus 110 rush yards over expected, just really bad. He also, I was really into Rachaad White as a rookie, and then was like open-minded to him last year. I was about even with the field last year after a not great rookie season, but it was the receiving that really had me on him. But his yards per out run has been like pretty mediocre. So
Yeah.
my thing with White is like, if there's anyone taking work, I view it as a problem. That is a really good note though about the pass blocking, because at the very least, he probably has a higher floor than it may feel like, because he's just not going to get displaced completely. That would be kind of shocking and probably require an injury. He's not going to lose the job outright to Irving.
Yeah, that PPR scamming that we saw last year was, Dave Canales using him, passing the ball to him as an extension of the run game, which is, why I'm pretty bullish on, one of the reasons I'm bullish on Jonathan Brooks this year is a little PPR scammer.
I want to ask you about it, but yeah, finish the point.
Just saying with Rachaad White, it's just, brute force volume with him.
Yeah. With Brooks, so there was a quote today from Canales on Brooks that you had up about his timeline, and basically, him probably not being ready for camp. That probably doesn't matter, but it's, it sounds like I guess I maybe kind of a public service announcement on, we should have priors on some of this stuff. Like, Jonathan Brooks probably won't be ready for day one of training camp, given that he tore his ACL in November, didn't have surgery till December. The fact that he's not on a timeline that, has him at a full, full practice workload right now is not a problem, but I do suspect it will hurt his ADP. And so I've actually cooled off on Jonathan Brooks cooled off from him being like a priority target, and just reminding myself, no, he actually will fall on news that he probably shouldn't fall on.
This is great news for Jonathan Brooks drafters.
Yes.
Prospective Jonathan Brooks drafters. Maybe not people who've been taking Jonathan Brooks in 82nd overall. But yeah, his quote was, Jonathan Brooks has a little bit of a ways to go, so we'll kind of progress them into camp. Training camp lasts a pretty long time. Like, there's a big gap between the beginning of training camp and week 1 of the NFL season. So like he doesn't, I mean, obviously it'd be better if he were available for training camp because he's getting reps and all that stuff. But we really just need him to be ready for week 1. I can absolutely see them, kind of easing him in for the first few weeks of the season, and let Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders display their
future Cowboys starter Miles Sanders.
But I mean, Canales has made it known that he wants to run the ball. He said, I can't wait to show you how stubborn I can be when it comes to running the ball, which we saw a lot on first and second downs last year in Tampa Bay. And as far as how the RB1 will be decided, he said it's competition. And this was before they drafted Jonathan Brooks. Competition, let's see who wants it most. Let's see who's hungry, runs angry, and that'll be the person that gets the ball the most. I don't think there's any doubt that Jonathan Brooks wins this job against Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, and I don't know if Raheem Blackshear is still there or not, but like it's gonna be Jonathan Brooks, and maybe it takes a few weeks for him to really get going. But like, we're just, for best ball, we're just worried about the last half of the season, really. Like, beginning of the season is nice to accumulate those points and get you higher up in the rankings, but he shouldn't be your only running back or like the one guy that you're relying on. Like, you can build around that. Like, what the situation is
right
with Jonathan Brooks. So just keep that in mind when you're building your team, and now you're going to be able to get a guy, probably slide down to the like low 90s maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Or high 90s, like not,
yeah.
Right near triple digits.
Late 90s. Yeah.
Absolutely in for that. They don't have a lot of playmakers in Carolina. They have Deontay Johnson and Jonathan Brooks, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think he falls on the news. People still don't understand the pup. The training camp pup doesn't mean you're going to miss regular season games, and he's going to start on the training camp pup. So when you see pup, don't freak out. It doesn't mean anything. It's expected.
When I see pup for him, I'm loving it because I know he's dropping in drafts.
Yeah. Well, there's also the thing of like, I think he's going to drop in drafts. So then I wouldn't take him when I normally take him. And then like we all kind of push him down on the expectation that he will drop. And then we're like, you idiots, don't you know the pup doesn't mean anything? It's like, well, you passed on him too.
Yeah, so, right.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the Bengals backfield. Have you seen it? Like what I've gathered is that they seem kind of like into Zack Moss as like legit being the starter, but I'm just like, I don't know. I need some convincing, I guess. After Moss, kind of washed out of Buffalo, he looked good for like half a season last year. Are we ready to fully buy in?
I mean, I'm ready to buy in. Okay. There hasn't really been much coach speak surrounding him so far, or Chase Brown, but and I just think Chase Brown is not very good. Like we see these clips, people say, "Oh, you're sleeping on this player," or whatever.
It's one clip with Chase Brown. It's a good clip.
Yeah, it's one. It's a single clip. He's a one-hit wonder. He's Chumbawamba.
Oh no! I've drafted way too much of him for him to be Chumbawamba. So I get knocked down. Yeah, we can't have that.
And what has really gotten me off the Chase Brown train is JJ Zacharyason's outlook for Chase Brown or
for his second year, his year 2 model. Yeah, not super bullish. Yeah,
could not be down batter.
You don't love that.
And Moss was fine. Yeah. Moss was fine last year.
Moss was fine. He was actually pretty good in the NFL Next Gen stuff. I have it up because I was looking at. He finished right behind Kyron. Rush yards over expected. Christian McCaffrey, then Devin Achan on 103 carries. He's second in the league. Just wild stuff. Then James Conner, then Jalen Warren, then Breece Hall, then Kyron, then Zack Moss. Pretty good.
Yeah, and he's not some journeyman. Like I realize this is his third team now, I think, but he's not some like old journeyman, washed up running back. Yeah, let's look at his most recent season. How did he do? He did pretty well. He's in a pretty decent situation now. Cincinnati is definitely going to be one of the pass heaviest teams in the league. But Zack Moss is going to get a lot of work there. And when they do hand it off, and when they're running, we saw with Mixon how much they like to run the ball when they get near the goal line. And I'm definitely betting on Zack Moss to be a goal line back over Chase Brown.
I think that makes a lot of sense. What about the Bears? Because I've had trouble clicking DeAndre Swift, and it seems like they're excited about the DeAndre Swift experience, but people tend to be more excited about the DeAndre Swift experience like before it starts happening, and then, we saw with Dan Campbell, that's the other thing. Like Dan Campbell was like, I'm done. We're drafting not done with the idea of Swift. In fact, we're going to spend a first-round pick on the idea of Swift again, but Swift himself out of here. He goes to the Eagles. It's somewhat predictably his receiving efficiency craters. They don't really throw the running back, but he wasn't all that efficient as a rusher in a situation where you would expect an explosive player like Swift to be explosive. He really wasn't. Now he goes to the Bears, where they're going to want to kind of like, I think, establish it more, like keep the offense on schedule, lean on their defense, not expose the rookie quarterback to too much volume, that kind of thing. That's not really who DeAndre Swift is, but it seems positive. Like they seem like, hey, this guy's, we can count on him. We can throw him the ball. And so I don't want to just like decide that I know what's going to happen when they think something good is going to happen. At the same time, I'm like, but he's DeAndre Swift, right? Like you're not going to enjoy building a reliable, steady rushing attack through DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, they so completely new offense, new offensive coordinator. But if we look back at Matt Eberflus's philosophy, he has this hot hand philosophy at running back, which we saw last year with the running backs. They did give Swift a lot of money, so yeah, I'm expecting him to get the majority of work there. But is he going to be getting the really high value work there? Like, okay, they're going to use him in the passing game for sure, but he is a terrible short yardage back. Like one of the worst short yardage backs when on fourth and one, or just whatever in one and goal line. They have two guys in Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson who are big backs, who that's who they're going to turn to on when they're near the goal line. I really don't see that much work for Swift down there. And if we're not getting touchdowns out of him, then what kind of stat lines, what kind of points do we expect from him?
All right, I gotta jump because we got ship chasing coming up here. But before we do, let me ask you about Drake Maye. I'm drafting a ton of Drake Maye right now, and it seems like this is the positivity coming out of Patriots camp so far has been mostly from beats who are saying, I read the other day, don't be shocked if he actually just takes this job. He's looking pretty good. But they've also said some positive stuff about his footwork, that being one of the things that they were really focused on because of him moving from more of a shotgun scheme to being more under center. Then want to do a lot of play action stuff, the footwork being really important. Seems like he's been a quick study there. He passed Bailey Zappi as the quarterback 3, which was kind of silly. They made him do that, but they did, and he did it very quickly. But it also seems like they have a plan in place. They want Jacoby Brissett to start the season. He probably will start the season as the starter. It's just how quickly. My thing is it May in week 4? Is it May in week 5? Is it May in week 9? That starts to hurt. So do you have a sense from where the coaches are of what this plan might be for May and how much he may kind of be disrupting it at all?
It sounds like they're just kind of taking it easy, just progressing slowly with him. They're not rushing anything. They're not super worried. Gerard Mayo is saying that the best player is going to play. Maybe that's Jacoby Brissett. Maybe it's Drake Maye. We shouldn't be freaking out over these. Again, context is so key. Elliot Wolf said Jacoby Brissett is a starter. He's QB1, but in context, right? They don't have true depth charts right now, and Gerard Mayo has said that. The whole moving above Zappy is it's just such a little charade. It's Drake Maye or it's Jacoby Brissett, and Jacoby Brissett is pretty decent quarterback. He is. If I had to guess the most likely outcome, it's that Jacoby Brissett starts the first 4 to 6 games. The Patriots have a pretty bad record.
Yeah,
and it's time to see what Drake Maye has. Yeah, they're not gonna throw him out there if they feel like he isn't ready. They're not gonna ruin him Zach Wilson was ruined. And feel so bad immediately to make a comparison between Drake Maye and Zach Wilson.
Don't do that to me,
man. He's going to get a shot, and if you look at everything that they're saying, it's a better and better outlook for him.
Yeah,
because Mayo initially was saying he's got a lot of room to grow, and then just the footwork is getting better. We're seeing him be a little more calm out there. We're talking about how engaged
drumbeat
he is, and talking with some of the receivers there, even when he's not getting reps on, like, what are you seeing out there? Like, here, like, what if we do this? So I think if we're just looking at bullish versus bearish of what's coming out from the coaches, like, I'd say it's more on the bullish side.
All right. Really appreciate your time. This was awesome. Just so much fun to dive into all these situations. You've got a podcast launching soon, right?
I do, yeah. The Coachspeak Index podcast will be launching at the end of next week. And I'm going to start with team-by-team breakdowns. And then we'll just go from there.
Hell yeah. All right. Excited. Can't wait to check that out. Thanks again for joining me. Everyone check out Legendary Upside. We've got some cool stuff rolling out on the site, including an article that I'll have out later today breaking down the early round running backs, kind of what they offer that you can't find later, which not a ton of them do, but some of them do. So I go into the ones that I do think are pretty exciting targets worth detouring away from the wide receivers and the values at quarterback and tight end in the early rounds. That'll be up on the site by the time you listen to this. See you next time.